Jimmy Butler, he's a very interesting player to me.
He's like, oh shoot, I don't know where to go with the ball because I haven't been able to think.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life. Now LeBron's a 4-time champion, and Anthony Davis gets his first.
It's unacceptable. So happy when the Astros lost because it would definitely be a 2020 thing.
Yeah, I was impressed by their game. Braden Point, Andre Palat, Nikita Kucherov, that was the best line in the playoffs, no doubt.
Stay undefeated when they face the mighty Cowboys with Garrett Gilbert.
Hey everyone, I'm Jared Sandler, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our MLB Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man that is with the questions and the stats, Austin.
Yeah, the MLB, as Kevin mentioned before we recorded, is probably the most stat-intensive sport that we cover. Baseball, if you've seen Moneyball, stats are all around in this league, in this sport, and it really does affect how teams make decisions. But I've had this question for a while. Which stats are overrated or underrated or just right? You can say that they are properly rated. But we'll start off with, I think, the easiest one for me. So I'll let Kevin go first. I'll give the stat. I'll let Kevin go first, and then I'll give my take on it as well. Pitching wins. So for starting pitchers, are pitching wins underrated as a stat, overrated as a stat, or do you think they're properly rated right now by fans, by the league, when it comes to voting and all that other stuff?
I'm gonna say overrated. Just because sometimes they don't get the win if their team doesn't get hits. Didn't Jacob deGrom only have 10 wins when he won the Cy Young for the
I think it was 11.
11? Okay. I know he pitched so well, but he had very few wins, and people were talking about that. And
Actually, it's funny. The first year he won the Cy Young, it was 10. The second year he won the Cy Young, it was 11. So I'm not going to say either of us are wrong. So he's won two Cy Youngs. One year he had 10. One year he had 11. We both remember different years. It doesn't matter. But yes, I agree with you completely. I think wins are overrated by fans, but I think they're properly rated by the league. And that's shown by DeGrom winning those Cy Youngs. So I think the league is valuing winning correctly. But I feel like there's some fans out there that are like, oh, my pitcher is 6-6. Well, he has an ERA that's 3.02. So he's playing extremely well. That's your team's fault for not getting them those wins. But I think the league properly rates wins, as you can see by both of DeGrom Cy Youngs. DeGrom was amazing, so they didn't care that he had 11 wins one year and 10 wins the other year because he played so well that it wasn't the reason why he had the losses. Was not because of him. It was because of his team. So I think I would say the league properly rated, but if I agree with you, fans overrate the stat.
Yeah.
So
okay. What's the next one?
The next one is ERA. So this is for starters and relievers, just in general. Do you think ERA by fans in the league is overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
I'm going to go properly rated. I think it's a very good stat because it shows you just like earn run. However, it can be tricky given defenses. Like I know you've brought up FIP. But to me, I think ERA is properly rated.
I have it a tad bit overrated just for the fact that I do believe that, again, defense does impact it. And the biggest thing is, like, if you play for the Rockies, your ERA is going to be higher just because it's easier to hit home runs there. And FIP and ERA plus, maybe not FIP, but ERA plus, I think is a much better stat because it shows compared to the league based on ballpark, defense, and everything is neutral. So pitchers for the Rockies get more leniency in ERA plus. FIP, I do think, is a better stat to determine defense, but ERA is roughly properly rated, but I would say it's a little bit overrated. There's some times where I would take a 3.75 ERA pitcher over a 3.4, 3.3, just because that one pitcher that's 3.75 is pitching in Colorado with the worst defense, and the guy at 3.3 is playing for the Yankees, who have not the most hitter-friendly park, even though right field is hitter-friendly, but the rest of the field is not. And then they also have great defense around it. They have so many Gold Glove winners. So if you're not hitting that bar, I would rather have the 3.75 guy. But this one I do think is very interesting. I think I know your answer, and I think we're going to disagree. This next stat is batting average.
Ooh, yeah, this one. Oh man, I think it can be overrated at times. I think it goes into the type of player you are. For batting average, it's great if you're hitting and putting the ball into play, but you could also look at like how many times does he get on base, like through walks, or what happens if it's a player like my main reasoning is like Joey Gallo when he was younger and with the Rangers before he got traded. He didn't have a great batting average, but he still was contributing a lot. So to me, it just depends on the player, and it can be used in a wider amount of formulas. But I don't base a player just on their batting average.
We do end up agreeing, not necessarily the same way, but those prime Joey Gallo, where he's hitting 253. The thing is, why he was so good is he was also on base 39% of the time at a 38.9. That's what made him very good. So I would say that on base percentage is not the same as batting average. I do think that batting average is overrated because if you're striking out a lot still and have a 3 or a 2.75, but strike out a lot, so you're not on base as much, I don't think that's as valuable. Obviously, home runs matter, but I think home runs, this is not something I'm going to bring up. I think home runs are a little bit overrated because if you're just hitting homers but not getting on base at all besides that, I do think that harms your team in a way. But if we're just talking batting average, I do think it's overrated. But we'll go on to on base percentage.
I'm maybe going to say underrated. Like, how many times are you just getting onto the field and getting onto the base? Which is, whenever you're on base, that's a good thing for your offense.
Yeah, I think we agree on this one. It's underrated, definitely. On base percentage is something that is extremely important. I don't care if you get no hits. If you're on base 50% of the time, which no one is, no one ever will be. But just imagine if you got basically no hits, you're batting 100, but you're on base 50% of the time. I don't care. I don't care. And if you look at Moneyball, the guys who get on base percentage is something that they really looked at. Not average, on base percentage. Because getting on base matters. That's why I think Juan Soto is so good. Does Juan Soto lead the league in batting average? No. He still bats 304, but he has the best OBP in the entire MLB. And he's already done that twice in his career, both in 2020 and 2021. His 428 on base percentage, again, leads the MLB. And I think that matters a lot more than being a Steven Kwan, who's now leading the league in batting average. Because even though Steven Kwan, Kevin, is batting 387, but has a lower on base percentage than Soto, I'd rather have Soto. It's average doesn't mean everything. Getting on base does. Any way possible. I don't care how you do it, get on base. And that's what Soto does so well. And a lot of those big on base percentage guys do. Now, hitting 387, he still has a really high on base percentage. His is like 404. So we're still good, right? But it's not the same. And I do believe that Soto, that's what makes Soto so good, getting on base. So I do think on base percentage is underrated.
All right. So we're in agreement so far on everything.
Yes, but this is a stat I think is the most controversial. And this is kind of a two-parter, but it's basically one. It's wins above replacement. It's WAR. Now you can divvy that up between pitchers and then O-WAR, which is offensive WAR, and then defensive WAR, which is D-WAR. So there's 3 different types of WAR. So you can say that one is underrated while one's overrated. I'll give you that jurisdiction. But in general, do you think wins above replacement is a overrated or underrated stat?
I want to say just right. Like, it's a very good stat when just to see the value a player has for the team given against the average. Like, how much better is he versus the average? I'm not really familiar with the other types. I know there's like F-WAR, but I'm not really sure.
F-WAR means that it's Fangraphs WAR, and then there's B-WAR, which is Baseball Reference WAR. So they're 2 different sites. I would say that people usually pick whatever helps their argument more. That's why I don't like WAR as much as some other people, because they will, okay, their F-WAR is higher, so I'll use F-WAR when I'm talking about in this argument. But this other player's B-WAR is lower, so I'll talk about his B-WAR and then compare them. No, you can't do that. You can't.
Yeah,
they have different formulas. That's just, you got to stay on the same website for both. I don't care what you use, but just be on the same for both so that they're on the same jurisdiction. But because each value it more. But that's also where you like, if one player has a higher B WAR, but the other person has a higher F WAR, again, it kind of, it's weird. It's just a weird stat. But I do think it matters. I do think it's important. I would say that pitching WAR and batting WAR, or O WAR, offensive WAR, are a little bit overrated, but I feel like just right, a little bit overrated. But I think that D WAR, defensive WAR, is heavily underrated. So I'll say WAR overall is about just right. I think we'll agree on that. But I do think that D WAR, the ability to play stellar defense, a Kevin Kiermaier, a Andrelton Simmons, I think is very underrated. People look at WAR and they're like, it's a 2 WAR, and this guy is, but they don't look into it and see this guy is not good on offense. He is a -1 O WAR, but he has a 3 D WAR. And 3 D WAR, Kevin, is one of the best seasons like ever. Like, you are, at least this year, you would be amongst the best. And that's something I don't think people give enough credit for. It definitely is something that I think is important, is having a good defense and being a good defender, especially if you're on a team that plays in a hard park or you don't have the best pitching. Using good fielders, I think, is definitely important. But let me go last year. If we go defensive WAR, let me go to MLB. Defensive WAR leader was Gabriel Moreno, the catcher for the Diamondbacks. He had a total of 3.1 defensive WAR. So that's who they determined was the best defender in the MLB. So like I said, if you have a -1 O WAR, like you can't hit all that well, but you can defend it a 3, you're the best defender in the MLB, and you have value to your team. So I feel like people see this guy has a 200 batting average. He's not that great. And then you see people got to realize that WAR matters on the defensive side. Because when you have a catcher, you have an important position. I do think that is extremely valuable, especially come playoff time. I mean, Moreno was very good in the playoffs as well. Not just hitting, because he hit amazing against Philadelphia with a almost 300 batting average, but also his defense. He is one of the best defenders in the MLB, and that showed in the playoffs for the Diamondbacks. And that those stats matter even when you're not hitting the best.
Yes, it's building that type of team. And yeah, Moreno was really great in the playoffs, but also he was a great defensive catcher, as you proved. And sometimes you need those defensive catchers, such as, like, I know Kyle Higashioka with the Yankees. He was important defensively behind the plate, and he was all right at the plate. Or for Jeff Mathis, I believe. You were a big fan of Jeff Mathis with the Rangers.
Yes, I was. He played for a lot of teams, including the Angels, Diamondbacks, Braves. But yes, he was a defensive catcher. And for his career, Kevin, he had -6.2 O WAR, but 12.6 D WAR. Almost all of his WAR, it ended up only being like 0.2 WAR for him because of how the adding system works. It's really weird. It's really weird how they add it. So he, for his career, only had 0.2 WAR, but it's basically all D WAR that he had. And his ability to play defense kept him in the league forever. I mean, he played from 2005 to 2021, 17 years. And to do that as a backup catcher is remarkable. Another player, we're just talking Rangers last year in the top 10 for D WAR, who didn't even get a Gold Glove, and that's Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien was a great fielder last year for the Rangers at second base.
Yeah, he's incredible. And I know with WAR, like I know Ian Kinsler had a great WAR at one point, so I've heard people talk about that. But we'll move on to another stat that you have, or is that it?
Yeah, I could do one more. Do you want me to do one more?
Up to you. You're all good.
Okay, I'll do one more, and we'll leave the last one. This is our 6th one. OPS. So this is on base plus slugging.
I'm gonna say underrated. I really like it. I know it can be a little bit confusing at first, but we've talked about on base, and then you can also talk about those hitters. So I'm curious what, like, Juan Soto's OPS is like compared to Aaron Judge's.
Very close. Very close.
Very close.
They're about the same, almost. Judge is a little bit higher, He has missed some games with injury, so has Soto, but I think it's underrated. I think it's the most important hitting stat. OPS plus is probably a little bit better because, like I said, if you're hitting in the Rockies Stadium consistently, it's easier to hit homers and all that stuff. But OPS plus, I think is the most important because it takes on base percentage and then adds your hitting to it. So I don't think homers is necessarily the most important. It's OPS. On base percentage is up there. Those two are very important. And when you add them together and make OPS, it is a great stat. So I agree with you. I think we basically agreed on the majority of them. We threw in a couple underrated, a couple overrated, and I think we both agreed that WAR overall is pretty fairly rated.
Yeah, and let us know what you think in the comments. I'll toss this over to Austin to close it out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please let us know of all 6 of these stats, which ones you thought were underrated, overrated, or just fair. And please catch us in our next video.